and having them work right next to each other specifically so that it would be harder for them to organize. If you can't even communicate in the same language, it's going to be bloody difficult to form a union and protest what the employer is demanding of you.
In the late 19th century, an increasing number of workers began to recognize that they could not successfully mobilize under the robber barons without overcoming their own racial and cultural prejudices. One of the most remarkable strikes occurred in New Orleans, 1892, when Teamsters, Scalesmen, and Packers united under what they called the Triple Alliance. Their demands included a 10-hour workday, overtime pay, and a union shop. In the words of one historian, the New Orleans strike represented the first general strike in American history to enlist both skilled and unskilled labor, black and white, and to paralyze the life of a great city. Delivery of food ceased. Streetcars remained idle. Electrical and gas workers walked off the job, plunging the city into darkness and revealing the stars. During the strike, the New Orleans press repeatedly tried to stoke the flames of racial hatred. Newspapers ran fabricated stories about mobs of black men harassing and beating up whites. The Triple Alliance abandoned their fight after the governor threatened to bring in the National Guard, but they maintained racial solidarity throughout the campaign.
There was this mass strike in 1892 in New Orleans, uniting basically the entire black and white working class of New Orleans. Workers, for example, at the docks were organized into biracial unions, so they were segregated within the same union local, but on the job, dock workers, line workers, etc., the danger of the job and the physical effort that goes into it tended to really break down racial divisions in those occupations first and foremost. So it was very significant. It was crushed, but then within a decade or so afterwards, there was another mass strike in New Orleans in which black and white workers again united. In the meantime, the local ruling class decided to make Jim Crow. Jim Crow was essentially a response to populism, the enforcement of separation of the races. It was legally sanctioned in the South. In the North, you had basically de facto racial segregation. So it was really a nationwide phenomenon. So basically, what did the U.S. ruling class do? They made it illegal for blacks and whites to share any public space together. They made it illegal for blacks and whites to marry. By the 1930s in Alabama, it was against the law to agitate for any kind of equal rights. That was the weapon that developed, that the U.S. corporate class developed in response to things like the New Orleans strike in 1892.
The New Orleans strike was emblematic of a growing spirit of solidarity between workers. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, it would find political expression in the People's Party, the Socialist Party, and the Progressive Movement. More importantly, it would lead to the formation of the Industrial Workers of the World, the most radical union in the history of the United States.